Welcome to the library. Tell me, have you ever spent time alone? Start to feel so lonely that you start to wonder if you really are alone? Well, tonight you're going to hear a story of a man who was left alone for far too long. Sit down, snuff out the lights, and prepare to be scared. They say that talking to yourself is the first sign of madness. Nobody ever really talks to themselves, though, do they? No. Deep down, far below all of our logic and our science and our civilization, when we talk to ourselves, we're actually talking to the darkness. When we run, exasperated, from room to room, opening drawers and pulling out sofa cushions, demanding aloud an answer to the question, where did I put my goddamn keys? What nobody wants to admit is we are asking the question of the very universe itself. I think that is because, beneath everything, we all want to believe in something greater than us, something that makes life just and fair, something that steers fate ever so slightly in our direction. Something that helps you to find your misplaced keys. If talking to shadows is then the first sign of madness, how far down the trail of insanity must one have gone when the shadows begin to talk back? It started about a month ago. Voices in the distance, out in the forest. I could hear the sound only dimly, creeping like skittering insects over the forest floor at first. The voices could be miles away. Sound travels very far in this valley, but I'm afraid you don't understand. You see, there cannot be anybody talking, at least not anybody living, because there's nobody left. Society is gone, crumbled to dust in a few short years by the wrath of a microscopic virus and the furious anger of humanity. The planet waged war across the globe, new countries seeming to join the fight every day, until there was no place on Earth left untouched by the vicious tendrils of war. They seep into the society like a root and take hold. All of life becomes geared towards the single-minded task of destroying one's enemy, until nobody can even remember why the war is being fought in the first place. Things had gone nuclear, as we always knew they would, roughly 6 months into the fighting. The most terrible weapons of human creation rained from the sky and blasted people by the millions into atoms. The bombs carved brutally at the landscape, cutting chunks from the earth the size of most towns. World War III, the war that everybody lost. We were lucky. The mountains around our outpost shield us from most of the nuclear fallout. Small blessings, I suppose. All radio contact ceased. The internet went dead. Electricity became a thing of the past. We had to learn how to survive how our ancestors had done so once before, foraging for berries and fruits and attempting to grow our own crops. We were only a small squadron for a small outpost. Mistakes were made in those early days, and one by one all of my squad mates died. Jim died of starvation before we had realized how to find our own food properly. Henry died when the upper branches of a tree he had climbed to scout the landscape snapped, and he plummeted 30 feet to the ground, breaking his neck in the process. Reggie and Joey bit the dust on a hunting trip. Joey was mauled badly by a grizzly that had somehow survived the nuclear fallout. Reggie stood on a bear trap that had been left out here by some long-forgotten hunter. His wounds had become infected, and, reset to the Dark Ages without antibiotics or health care, he eventually succumbed. That was years ago. I was in my 20s when World War III began, and I am nearing 60 now. That is an awful long time to be alone. I'm surprised the darkness didn't begin to talk back to me before now. Isolation is an awful thing. Peaceful at first, But the loneliness grows within you each day until you think it might drive you crazy. You think differently. There's not so much need to talk out loud anymore, so you hardly ever do. Your own voice begins to sound strange to you, alien. You begin to forget what other human beings look like, and eventually, if you remain alone for long enough, you begin to wonder if humanity ever existed at all. Night by night, the voices seem to come closer, closer and closer as the days ticked by. I realized on the fourth day what they must be. My time had finally come, and these were the Reapers, must be the Reapers, come to escort me on my final journey away from all of this, from the pain, from the suffering. Despite all of this, I found I did not wish to go. The human will to survive is a remarkable thing. It can adjust to almost any circumstance, establishing that as a new normal. It is also prepared to go on fighting, even when all hope has long since been lost. They arrived on the 32nd night after I first heard the voices. I know because I had begun checking them off in the wooden wall of the cabin, just below the window, scratching tiny marks into the wood to allow me to keep track. I was woken from my sleep by the sound of footsteps outside, of bodies moving through the forest, stepping on a carpet of leaves and snapping straggling branches that reached out for these intruders. I wanted them to leave me alone, wanted them to go away, but they approached the cabin. I cowered inside, hidden behind the comfortable sofa that had become my most treasured companion in many years of isolation. Bang, bang, bang. I didn't answer. Didn't even dare to breathe for fear that they would find me if I did. But they wouldn't go away. I could hear them now much more clearly. I could work out their words. Come outside. Come outside. No, 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 I shrieked inside my own head. If I stepped outside, they would take me. The Reapers would carry me off into the night, and I would never again know life. Besides, I was a soldier, and a soldier does not abandon his post. With an almighty crack, the wooden door to the cabin split apart. A short, sharp kick sent the broken pieces flying across the room, and in entered a group of 4 men. Men. Just normal, average-looking men, each wearing army fatigues and carrying a machine gun. How cruel of them to come for me in the guise of my fallen comrades. But that wasn't what had happened. These were not my fallen comrades. Looked nothing like them, in fact. They froze when they saw me, their eyes wide with a surprise that gradually wilted into a look I had not seen in decades. It was a pity. A look of pity. "Oh my God," one of the soldiers murmured. He reached for a radio clipped to his coat. "We've found a survivor. We're bringing him back to the headquarters." I backed away from them, right up to the wall. In some region of my mind it occurred to me how I must look to them. Time had seen my hair and beard grow wild and bushy, just as it had also robbed me of the chestnut colour they used to be. I must look like a wild man with my silver tangled mane of hair. "It's okay, sir," another one said. "You're a soldier?" he asked, gesturing to my, by now, considerably worn and threadbare fatigues. "Lieutenant Jones," I confirmed, "stationed here at Outpost 412. Like muscle memory kicking in after all this time, I raised one hand to my forehead in a salute. The soldier saluted back, but still looked upon me with pity. "How long have you been stationed out here?" their leader asked. "I don't know," I shrugged. "Long time. I was sent here during the war. I was 27 then. I looked at these people, these odd people who had appeared here, the first people to enter my life in decades. 'We have something to tell you, Lieutenant,' their captain said, 'and it's not going to be easy.' 'I already know,' I said bitterly. 'Everyone is gone. You could see some of the bombs falling from here. I already know.' That's just it, Lieutenant, he said. The war's been over nearly 30 years. Everything returned to normal a long time ago. You should have left your post years ago. I stared at him for what felt like a long time. My mind felt like it had been torn in two and was now drifting away from itself. Was it possible I'd missed out on the best years of my life purely because somebody forgot to tell me that the war was over? Was this a trick? Were these the angels of death I had originally feared? All options were terrible, all of them. I began to laugh. I laughed loud and I laughed long. I laughed hysterically and crumpled to the floor. Shit, how long has he been in there? Dr. Russell looked at the monitor in the panel in front of him, a look of horror on his face. Since he went in Friday morning, came the nervous reply from the junior technician sitting at the desk. Russell could see 2 years of his work going up in smoke at this almighty cock-up. He flinched at the bollocking he knew he was going to get. Is he alive? The technician shook his head in the affirmative. Oh, yes, sir. He's been moving, albeit very slowly, and crawling most of the time. Russell studied the screen until eventually he saw the man move from a current fetal position to laying on his side as if ready for sleep. Were the lights on or off? Russell's angry stare drilled into the technician, making him squirm in his seat. Off, came the whispered reply. Russell swore again and shuddered at the thought of the man spending the whole weekend in a 10-foot by 10-foot room with no water, food, or light. 6 guinea pigs had come to his laboratory, so he could test human endurance in isolation. They were only meant to be in the soundproof rooms for a matter of hours before being sent home, with thanks for helping in his experiment. This man had been forgotten about. But for the best part of 3 days, what sort of state would his mind be in? Sir, the urgency in the technician's voice made him look at the screen. What happened? The lights have gone out. Yes, I can see that. Why are they off? The technician shrugged his shoulders. After just a few seconds they came back on, but there was no sign of the man. Where's he gone? Russell could see no sign of him. Fearing that the man had injured himself and was out of sight, he instructed the technician to unlock the door. He was outside the room in a few seconds and rushed in hoping to find all was well. He didn't notice the pair of furious and mad eyes looking down on him from above. Bryce had many quirks, but one stood out amongst all others. He outright refused to go to the telephone, sending any one of the other men in his stead. The top brass back home either understood the reason or had gotten used to it. He sat with his back to the other men in the mess, nursing a mug of coffee, watching each breath crystallize as he exhaled. The mess heating was once military grade, but engineered for temperate deployments and weak against the Antarctic chill. Much to the consternation of the other personnel, the only foam that he had sanctioned was at the end of a short walk across the tundra to the second habitat. Like the rest of the station personnel, Commander Bryce had been quickly shipped in from another assignment. In his case, it was from a classified unit near Rendlesham in England. All the station personnel had seen things they weren't supposed to talk about. Every one of them had brought some spectre of a memory in with them. The official designation of the station was the Nels Orkrod Research Station. Its regiment of misfits just called it Haunted House. At Bryce's former posting there had been an incident. As it was one of the older, deeper facilities, they pumped in the concrete to seal and forget. In the bowels of the facility there was a telephone, fed by the otherwise dead telegraph lines long since abandoned for civilian use. It was already sealed behind walls 12 feet thick, without windows and without doors. The telephone rang without answer, day and night. It was ringing the day Bryce arrived as a private. It was ringing when the concrete filled the corridors. Everything in the facility sought to avoid it, even other classified subjects, however otherworldly, grew quiet in its vicinity. For over a decade, Commander Bryce's job was to listen to it ring. It was 3 in the morning on the night of a catastrophic but unrelated incident before all the utilities to the facility, including the telegraph lines, were severed. Weary, Bryce arrived home to a darkened house, once familiar, with shadows that seemed too long for it. Piercing a silence unnatural, even for such a late hour, a telephone began to ring. Well, that brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Now run away, children. Run away back to your beds and get some sleep, if you can. I'll see you next time in the library, if you dare.